Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking what is honestly a true corporate thriller. We're going to look at how one of the most prestigious, high-performance brands on the entire planet found itself staring right into the abyss, quite literally days away from total financial collapse.
So if you ask just about any modern car enthusiast today, hey, what car saved Porsche from bankruptcy? I can almost guarantee you the answer you'll hear most often is dead wrong. To uncover what actually happened, we need to travel back to the incredibly dark days of the early 1990s.
Section 1. Days away from collapse. Picture the automotive landscape back in 1993. Porsche was trapped in this brutal perfect storm. You had a global recession going on, and to make matters worse, their vehicle lineup was incredibly stale and aging. The situation was completely dire. 14,000. That is the total number of cars Porsche sold globally in the entire year of 1993. And get this, only 3,000 of those found buyers in the absolutely critical United States market. This catastrophic drop in sales resulted in a devastating financial loss of 240 million Deutschmarks. It wasn't just a bad sales slump, They were literally running out of cash to keep the lights on.
When you look at the sheer velocity of their decline, it's actually terrifying. Back in 1986, they were moving over 50,000 units, really riding high on the excesses of the decade. Then, just 7 short years later, boom, they crashed down to 14,000. For an independent automaker that's carrying massive factory overhead costs, a plunge like that, that's an absolute death sentence. They needed a miracle, and they needed it fast.
Section 2. The myth of the Cayenne. So how exactly did they pull off this ultimate escape act? Did the Cayenne SUV save Porsche? Because if you spend literally any time on car forums, you hear people swear up and down that abandoning traditional sports cars to build a big, heavy family SUV in the early 2000s is the sole reason Porsche even exists today. It gets repeated so often, people just accept it as pure fact.
But here's the truth. No. The Boxster saved Porsche. The Cayenne just made it rich. While the Cayenne definitely went on to generate unprecedented massive wealth for the brand in the 2000s, Porsche was already entirely rescued and actually thriving long before that SUV ever hit the pavement. The true savior was a little, relatively inexpensive mid-engine roadster. The numbers really don't lie here. By 1998, which is 4 full years before the Cayenne even debuted, Porsche had already clawed its way back to a $166 million profit. This massive financial turnaround was entirely driven by the successful launch and the explosive sales of the Boxster. It completely disproves the whole Cayenne myth.
Section 3. A roadster to the rescue. To replace their aging front-engine cars like the 968, Porsche's management knew they had to create an all-new, highly desirable, but critically, an affordable sports car to get their volume back up. They looked around at the landscape and saw undeniable market proof in the Mazda MX-5 Miata. The Miata had launched in 1989 and proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was still a massive, hungry market for fun two-seat roadsters. So, Porsche decided to do it, but to do it the Porsche way. Designer Grant Larson looked right into their own rich history, drawing direct styling inspiration from the classic 1955 Porsche 550 Spyder and those legendary 718 RSK racers that used to absolutely dominate tracks like Le Mans. The end result was a totally fresh concept. The name Boxster itself is a really clever portmanteau, combining their signature Boxer flat 6 engine layout with the open-top roadster body style. But under the skin, this 986 generation was a massive leap forward. It featured Porsche's very first fully water-cooled engine, and they bolted it right amidships, directly behind the driver. That gave the car a perfect center of gravity and made it the absolute handling benchmark in its segment.
Section 4. The Toyota Production Miracle.
But here's the harsh reality of the car business. A great car design means absolutely nothing if your factory is too bloated and chaotic to actually build it at a profit. And back then, Porsche's Stuttgart factory was kind of a disaster. So Porsche's ruthless CEO, Wendelin Wiedeking, did the unthinkable. He brought in former Toyota lean consultants, led by Chihiro Nakio. Now, as you can imagine, the proud German engineers were initially pretty insulted, but the results were drastic. As the story goes, Wiedeking literally used a circular saw on the assembly line to violently cut down these towering parts shelves. They aggressively forced the factory to abandon hoarding parts, instantly slashing their warehouse storage from 28 days down to just 7.
The difference was literally night and day. In the old Porsche way, workers were actually climbing ladders to sift through messy bins. It was taking a staggering 120 hours to assemble a single car. By adopting the new Toyota way, Implementing these just-in-time production cells, assembly time completely plummeted to 72 hours per car. And better yet, manufacturing errors fell by an astounding 50%. This whole operational revolution is what actually gave the Boxster its profitable margins. Section 5. The Purist Backlash.
Of course, survival at this kind of scale required some really drastic compromises, which ended up sparking a massive conflict with their traditionalist fans. To stay afloat, R&D head Horst Marchart introduced what they called the carryover parts strategy, or COP. He realized there was just no way they could afford to design two completely separate vehicles, so he orchestrated this brilliant master plan to co-develop the entry-level 986 Boxster and the upcoming flagship 996 generation 911 right side by side. Get this, they shared 36 to 37% of their components. We are talking identical doors, front wings, bonnets, front-end structures, suspensions, and even those water-cooled engine elements. It absolutely saved Porsche millions in development, but it meant the cheap Roadster and the legendary 911 looked identical from the nose all the way to the A-pillar. Now, the absolute flashpoint of this purist anger was the controversial fried egg headlights. To save money, Porsche decided to combine the main beams and the indicators into a single lighting unit. Well, the traditionalists completely revolted. They were absolutely furious that their sacred, high-end 911 was being cheapened by sharing a face with a lower-tier model. They've violently accused Porsche of dumbing down the brand's heritage just to save a few bucks.
Section 6. The Unsung Savior.
But you know what? Despite all the loud media uproar from purists over the shared parts and the new water-cooled engines, the actual financial results were undeniably positive. The wider market spoke much louder than the critics, and the Boxster's evolution became this massive triumph. The concept stunned the Detroit Auto Show back in '93. By '96, the production 986 launched to rave reviews for its incredible handling. By '98, like we mentioned, they were back to major profitability. Then in 2000, they brought out the 250 horsepower Boxster S, finally giving it the serious punch that the track enthusiasts were begging for. The Boxster remained the brand's absolute best-selling model all the way until 2003. And by 2007, heavily propelled by the efficiency standards the Boxster project initiated in the first place, Porsche didn't just survive, they actually became the most profitable automaker per unit in the entire world.
The final tally really says it all, 164,874. That is the massive volume of first-generation 986 Boxsters sold. It was an absolute smash hit that single-handedly funded Porsche's future, paving the way for the incredible, dominant lineup we see on the roads today. Without this exact car, combined with those ruthless factory changes, there simply is no modern Porsche.
Which brings us to the future, and a rather fascinating question to end on. As the Boxster prepares to shift away from internal combustion to a purely electric powertrain with the upcoming 718, will it have to save the company all over again in a completely changing automotive landscape? It's definitely something to think about as we watch this legendary brand continue to evolve. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.